Hey, Jay.
Hey, Matt, I can see you. You're on TV.
Oh, well, we figured it out. We weren't sure exactly how we were going to do all of this, but I think we figured it out. So I could see you and you could see me. What's going on, brother?
You know, if I were any better, I would be Red Farmer looking over the car my childhood buddy Johnny Redmond presented to him this afternoon at the Talladega Motorsports Museum.
Jay, I saw that on social media, and I'm so glad you brought it up because it was the first question that I was going to ask you about. For those in the audience, many of our listeners are big NASCAR fans, and some of them perhaps go back this far. But for those Red Farmer is amazing.
He's an icon. I mean, he's an icon.
One of the original members of the Alabama gang.
Right.
And how old is he now? Do you know?
Yeah, he's in his 90s. I'm not sure that he knows exactly, but this is what Johnny told me. Johnny's got to be pretty good buddies with him. And the way that Red describes it, he says, well, ask him how old he is, and he says, well, I don't buy green bananas. How funny is that? How funny is that?
Is he still getting behind the wheel and getting on the track?
I can't imagine he does. I don't know. I didn't ask him. There was a huge crowd of people, so I got a chance to shake his hand, take some pictures, but I cannot imagine he's still racing.
Well, I know Red. I think as you know,
he raced into his 80s.
Oh,
he raced into his 80s, absolutely.
But that is very cool. So tell me about the car.
He doesn't buy green bananas.
He doesn't buy green bananas. That's funny. Well, tell me about this car. So your buddy presented him with a kind of one that was in his honor?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's something Johnny built. It's a type of car that Red raced back in the day, back in the 60s. It was a 63, I think, Ford Fairlane. Johnny found the body somewhere. And it's a big car. It's it's a 114-inch wheelbase, which, that's big. Mm-hmm. The current Cup cars at 110, the little late models I raced were 106. So, I mean, it's a big car. But, yeah, and he worked on it for years. I asked him, how much time do you have in this, Johnny? He said, well, labor hours, probably 2,000. But he engineered the whole thing. He's an engineer by trade. Mm-hmm. And, worked on space stuff up in Huntsville. And so he designed the frame, designed the roll cage, designed the suspension, designed everything. But it's made to look like the cars they raced back in the 60s.
Wow.
And Mr. Farmer just loved it. He absolutely loved it. He was, looking at everything and asking a lot of questions. And there was a big crowd of people around, and everybody wanted to take pictures of him. And I didn't really think about it until I was driving out there. Well, it's race weekend at Talladega. So, and the party has started, Matt. I thought, well, I mean, it's Friday afternoon, right? There won't be anybody out there. Oh, boy.
Oh, no. I mean, that party starts Tuesday or Wednesday, Jay, and it goes all weekend long.
Yep.
Well, I only wish that I had you at the Talladega Boulevard at about 2:00 on Saturday night, Sunday morning, I guess it was, to witness what I witnessed on the boulevard because, my friend, it was insane.
I cannot believe you spent the night in the infield at Talladega.
I told this story yesterday because we had Noah Gregson in the studio with us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he was doing a tour of Nashville in advance of the Super Speedway race, the Cracker Barrel 400. And and I was telling the story about my strongest memory of that night, and I will admit to you, Jay, there was brown water involved, and so the memories get fuzzy.
Sure.
But my strongest memory of that night was about 3:00 in the morning trying to get to sleep, and there was some woman calling for her dog. Her dog had gotten loose, and I forget the dog's name. It was like Bingo or something. And she's like, Bingo, Bingo, Bingo. And finally, some guy from way across the infield said, will somebody either find or shoot that dog? And she stopped yelling for Bingo right after that.
Poor Bingo.
Well, we invite questions coming in for Jay St. Clair of a legal variety, obviously, 615-737-9986, or of a racing variety. Frankly, Jay and I get off in racing territory during the season. Jay, I've got to tell you this, though. You and I have talked about this for a number of years, and I had Noah Gregson in. He's with Front Row Motorsports. He rides around in the number 4 car in the Cup Series, and he was a hoot, an absolute hoot.
No, he's a big personality. He's a big personality.
And I asked, I don't know how I thought to ask. Well, it's because he was driving for Stuart Haas until they disbanded their Cup.
Sold out, right?
Yeah, they sold out and disbanded their Cup rides. And I asked him how well he had gotten to know Tony Stewart. And I said, I've always wondered if it was really true that he wanted to win so bad that he was willing to go number 2 in the suit. He goes, oh, it's 100%. He confirmed this story, Jay. He said that he was hunting with Tony Stewart, he said, just a couple of weeks ago. And I said, well, how in the world did you confirm this story? He said, I asked him about it. And I said, you asked him about it? He goes, yeah. Everybody talks about it, so I just went ahead and asked him, did you really go number 2 in your fire suit at Watkins Glen? And Tony said, yeah, I won the race too, didn't I?
They're a different breed. Real race car drivers. I mean, they're just a different breed, man.
Oh man! Well, it was a lot of fun having Noah in the studio with us. Jay, your area of expert. I mean, well, you're pretty fair as an expert in auto racing, but you're a better lawyer. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about these judges. I mean, we like to throw the phrase around, nobody's above the law. I think the Justice Department demonstrated that in a couple of cases, one in New Mexico and the other in Wisconsin. You can't just go around flaunting the law and expect to get away with it no matter if you wear a black robe or not, huh?
Matt, here's what I would say about that. The quality of state court judges around the country varies greatly. There is a huge difference between, as a group, not individually, as a group, state court judges versus federal judges. Federal judges are vetted. They have to be confirmed by the Senate. And so you weed out people who should not be judges. Mm-hmm. That's not true at the state level. State level, most state court judges are elected, and they run. It's on a political party, man. Others are appointed. I think mostly in Tennessee they're appointed. I know the Supreme Court justices are there, and maybe even all the way down to general session judges. That's a much better system, in my view. So you get a very wide variety of quality of legal acumen, and frankly, quality of person. And I'm just saying it. It's just a fact, man. And I've known a bunch of them who, if they had ever had to go through any kind of vetting, would not have made it. And I'm telling you, judges, I sure hope our friend Richard is listening. And I hope maybe he would never say anything about this on air, but maybe he'll talk to us as the back channels. But a lot of judges get the Napoleon complex, particularly once they've been on the bench for a while, Matt. And they just have a fiefdom, and they have a tremendous amount of power. They do in their courtroom. They can do whatever they want to do in their courtroom. They can get reversed on appeal. But in that moment, what they say goes.
Right.
If they call a bailiff and tell the bailiff to lock up Matt Murphy, guess what happens?
Matt Murphy gets locked up.
That's exactly right. At that very moment, Matt, that's exactly right. And so it's disappointing, but I'll be honest with you, not surprising to me at all.
Well, I mean, you have said so much there, Jay, but you remind me that with someone that has that level of immediate power, maybe not long-term power, but immediate power, you better have someone with that level of power that is a person of high character.
Right.
And when you find those people that are not of high character, then sometimes they expose themselves and abuse the power that they truly have. I mean, in the short term, we give judges immense amount of power. I mean, well, like you say, I mean, they can lock someone up.
Absolutely.
Just because they say so.
I've seen it happen. In fact, there was even a federal judge here, and if Richard's listening, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And he got a reputation so that if you had a hearing going on over his courtroom, somebody would say, well, where are you going? Well, I'm going to Judge Blank's courtroom. Well, you better take a toothbrush. Because this is in federal court, and they had a little sale off of the courtroom so that when they brought prisoners in, for sentencing or some kind of hearing, they had to have a place to keep them locked up. Mm-hmm. And so there was a little lockup, a little like a closet, but it was a lockup. And, yeah, if he really got upset with a lawyer, he'd lock him up for, an hour or two.
Right. Just make them think on it for a hot minute.
Well, make the point. No, what he's doing, he's saying, look, I am in charge. This is my courtroom, and you better do what I say.
Our good friend called it black robe syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
That's what our friend called it, and I can understand it. I mean, you get that level of power and control. It would be easy to, I suppose, if you're of low character, to abuse it. Yeah,
well, it's so common that there is a phrase for it.
Black robe syndrome.
Right.
Josh wants to know, ask Jay when he's going to sit on the bench.
Josh, they have a 3-skeleton rule. If you have 1 skeleton in your closet, that's fine. Maybe even 2. But 3, you're out. Well, Josh, I passed the 3-skeleton rule probably in my 30s. I might have made it to 45. And I'm age limited out now anyway. There was a time when I thought about being on the Alabama Supreme Court, man. Our buddy Jay Mitchell, I was probably about his age. There was a vacancy at the time, and Riley was the governor, and we had a lot of folks that were close to him. So I thought about it, but decided I couldn't take the pay cut.
Yeah, well, you would have taken a pay cut, I'll tell you that. And I mean, I agree with you, Jay, that I having experienced it both ways. I mean, here in Tennessee, where you have your Supreme Court, which is an appointment-based system, and then in the state of Alabama, where we saw, I mean, in my time, millions and millions of dollars to support this judge or that judge. Yeah. And it was my experience, because you know what I do for a living, right? We have these folks on that are running for public office, and you ask them questions. Well, I stopped having judges on years ago, Jay, and you know exactly why.
They can't answer anything.
Well, that's right. And and for those who don't know, they're not permitted through the canon of judicial ethics to answer questions that may come before them as a judge. Right. So
they can't prejudge the case. Right.
So if I ask their position on any issue, they can't answer me legitimately. Right. So, I mean, what? So then my question becomes, well, then how can people adequately determine whether or not they want to vote for these folks?
They can. The answer is they can. That's why, I tell you who's really hard to pick. Really hard. It's a doctor. How are we supposed to get really good information to know who is a really good doctor, man? The only way I know to do that, frankly, is word of mouth. Is getting a personal reference. Same thing with lawyers. It is really hard to pick a good lawyer. It's an imperfect market. And the same thing is true about judges. We know very little about them. And the only thing, I'd say the one occupation that doesn't fit in that is radio talk show host. We got a lot of information about them.
Well, most of it, us radio talk show hosts would prefer you not have, and most of it you learn in Tunica, Mississippi, or thereabouts on the golf course too. Jay, I do have this theory, and I want to float this by you while we're talking about judges, and we'll get to calls and questions coming up in just a moment. But my theory about the United States Supreme Court, just in my experience, and you're far more familiar with this than me. You're the only one in this conversation that's argued a case before the Supreme Court. But it seems to me that judges, they never get more conservative when they're on the court. I think that if they are conservative, if they're strict constructionists, they sometimes remain so. Antonin Scalia, Clarence Thomas, two good examples. But if they move at all, it seems that they move to a more, dare I say, liberal interpretation of the Constitution. Do you think that's a fair analysis?
Well, you're not the only person that's ever said that, man. In fact, I would say that is the prevalent view.
Okay.
That is a very commonly held view of Supreme Court, particularly Supreme Court justices.
Why do you think? Do you think that is just because they want to it creates a value or an equity in the judicial branch?
The honest answer is I don't know, because I've never talked to anybody about it, man. I think some of it may be just a little bit of social pressure, frankly. Mm-hmm. Well, more so during the 60s and 70s, when everything was becoming a little bit more liberal. I got to be honest with you, Matt. I'm seeing a real cultural change. And we're seeing it in Gen Z.
Right.
Have you seen some of these polls?
Oh,
where
yes.
a majority of men under age 25 identify themselves as conservative.
Yep.
So there's a chance. So my guess is just pure speculation, but I think it's that I think it's maybe almost a subconscious sort of social pressure to become more liberal as society became more liberal.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good analysis. Larry has written in, and he wants to know how fast Jay's Z06 will go. Jay, how fast will your Z06 go?
Yeah, 170 miles an hour. I've never had it there. The straightaways at Barber aren't long enough, to get up to full speed. Mm-hmm. Fastest I've been at Barber is 120. Here, Road Atlanta's got a long straightaway, and the C5 guys we talk about it, and they say you could get to about 150 there. So I may have to try that out.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, it'll go 170.
It'll go as fast. That's about as fast as you want. I mean, for me,
it's funny, Matt, because when I was racing out of Birmingham, and the straightaways there are 120 yards long, and there's a football field. So you can't go that fast. And people ask me, well, how fast would you go? I say, top speed's about 125. And they say, wow, does that seem fast? And my answer is, well, not when the guy in front of you is going 126. Because every lap you see him pull about another half car length ahead.
Getting a little bit further away, away. You're like, man, I'm going slow.
Yeah, it doesn't seem fast because it's all relative. It's all relative to what's going on around you.
Well, the opportunity that I had at Talladega to go out on that track, and you think that it would just be a freaky sensation, and you've been on some of those bigger tracks, Jay. You mentioned the relativity because the track is so huge.
Right.
You just don't feel like you're going as fast as you truly
it's
are.
like jumping out of an airplane at 12,000 feet. And it's like I cannot be jumping out of an airplane at 12,000 feet up.
No.
It's like a cartoon.
You were a lot more afraid standing on top of the Hoover Dam than you were jumping out of that airplane.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't real.
That's right. It's fake. David is up next with a question for our man Jay St. Clair on Fri-Jay. David, you're up. What's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well.
I got a question. I got convicted for selling marijuana in 1984, and I was trying to buy a fire gun or a firearm.
Yeah.
And, I need to get my record expunged.
Right.
I've already talked to my attorney who represented me in the case, who's a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine before he got his law degree. Mm-hmm. I worked with him during summers when I was in high school. Anyway, I talked to him recently. That I wanted to see what you thought.
Well, my advice is talk to your friend. You're going to need a lawyer to get this done, David. There is a way to get it done, but you would never get it done by yourself. It's complicated, It's technical, and you need to have somebody that has done this successfully. And so you've already done what I would advise you to do, and that is to talk to a lawyer. And the perfect lawyer to do it would be the one who represents you in the case. If
That's
he
what I
says,
thought.
Yep. Yep. No, you're right where you need to be. And if he says that, yeah, he'll do it, you're going to have to pay him, but it's worth it. And, lawyers don't work for free. Well, not knowingly anyway. But if he says, well, I'm not the right person for that, then ask him, okay, I appreciate you telling me that. Tell me who is. So you are already headed down the path you want to be headed down, David.
Okay, I was just waiting on to return my call. I'm sure there's other people I want to talk to you.
Well, David, thank you, brother.
More your time.
Hey, look, call me back and let me know how it goes. Let us know how it goes, David.
Him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Appreciate you, David. Thank you so much. Mike is next in Mount Juliet with a question for our man, Jay St. Clair. Hey, Mike.
Hey, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
A real quick question. I'll make it as fast as I can. I've got a really good friend that's living in Kentucky in a rental property, and the rental property is a little iffy. Like there's been some holes in the floor and some disrepair, and she recently broke her foot falling through one of these holes in the floor. And it's a bad situation, and now her landlord has taped a scrap piece of paper, cardboard, to her front door that says evicted. And I just can't believe that that's legal, but I figured
no, it's not.
No,
it's not legal, Mike, but she needs to move out of there.
Well, she's definitely doing that, but
well, I wouldn't worry about the piece of paper.
She's got a broken foot now, and she can't work.
Yeah, well, she may be able to sue them for the broken foot.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were calling about, Mike. I mean,
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Well, I'm getting ahead of the. Tell me how I can help you, Mike.
Does she have any legal recourse to, get compensated for it or just stay here until she can find someplace else to go?
Yes, she can sue the land. She can sue the landlord for having a dangerous situation in the rental property. She can sue that, and she just needs to get a lawyer to do that. But in the meantime, my advice to her is she needs to find another place to live. She doesn't, particularly once she sues the guy. So two things she needs to be doing. Yep. First thing she needs to do is get a lawyer to represent her in that personal injury case. Second thing is find another place to live and move out as soon as you can.
Okay. Well,
Mike, go ahead. Sorry.
She's called a couple of attorneys in the Kentucky area, and they're all telling her that the landlord has all the power in this situation, and she's screwed.
She's got to keep looking.
Yeah, I mean, and Mike, thank you for the call. I mean, Jay, there are renters' rights.
That's right.
Each state. I mean, you can't just. I mean, your landlord can't come over and say, "Hey, you're evicted. Get out tomorrow." I mean, that's.
No, that's right. The reason lawyers don't want to take this case, man, is it doesn't have a lot of money in it.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they make up these excuses.
Right.
But that's why it's not a big injury, and it's going to take a lot of time to do it. And she may end up just having to file a lawsuit herself.
Well, good luck, Mike. Let us know how it goes. Let's get to one more on the phones. I've got several questions from the Super Text line, which you can get to, 615-737-9986. But first up is AJ out of Nashville. AJ, you're on with Jay St. Clair. What's going on, AJ?
Afternoon, folks. I'm going to make it really quick. We noticed some mold in our apartment, and we did tell our apartment office folks, and they took their sweet time to bring somebody. About 3 weeks after we told them about the mold, they brought somebody. They took the drywalls apart. They sprayed something that made us leave the house. They replaced a couple of windows that were just full of mold. One of the windows is still there. There is mold at the door. So I don't know. What should I do about this? Can I take any legal actions against these people? The lease is under my sister's name, so we are allowed to. So I don't know if that's something that would complicate it or not, but.
No, you can do something about it. It sounds like they're trying to solve the problem, but they hadn't worked it full. The first thing I would do is just talk with your landlord and say, look, we appreciate what you've done, but you hadn't done enough. Here's what we would need to get done, and can you let me know if you're going to do that, and if you are, when? I would first have the conversation with the landlord, then tell him that, look, we don't want to make a bigger issue about this than it is, but we can't continue to live here. Have that conversation with them. Maybe that'll prompt them to action. But if it doesn't, then yes, you have rights. They have a responsibility to make rental property habitable and not dangerous to the renters. And so, yes, you could pursue that claim. You could do it yourself or hire a lawyer. And what I would do is try to find some lawyers that say they do this kind of work and talk to them and see if they'd be willing to represent you.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, AJ,
good luck,
thank you.
AJ.
Yeah, good luck with that. On the topic of citizenship, Jay, 8119 writes, and we touched on this last week, and there's a lot of interest in it. How is it that illegals get due process, writes 8119? Why a citizenship test and a citizenship oath? What's the point of that if they're considered citizens? How was Obama able, for the most part, to bypass due process? I would disagree with some of the characterization of that text, but the you touched on this last week, and I thought it was such a great answer. The Constitution says uses a couple of different words in
That's
it.
right, and there's a very important distinction between the two of them. In some places of the Constitution, it talks about rights of citizens. In other places of the Constitution, particularly the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, says that all persons have the right to due process of law. And so that's how illegal aliens have due process rights. It's in the Constitution. Now, that's not what they had in mind when they wrote it. What they had in mind, frankly, were former slaves. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
But that's the way it reads, and that's the way it's going to be interpreted. So the real question is, what process are they due? And it's different for aliens than for citizens. United States citizens have greater due process rights than aliens do. They have some, but not much. Mm-hmm. I mean, for example, this goober they're making a big deal about in El Salvador, or wherever he is now. They could bring him back, have a hearing that'll last an hour, man, and then they could say, okay, we're going to deport you.
Right.
Well, they have given him due process, or give him as much time as he wants to put on all the evidence he wants. And at the conclusion of the hearing, the judge bangs the gavel and says, I'm going to order you deported. Well, he just got his due process. So this whole thing is, and the law gets this way a lot, Matt, it's kind of form over substance. But, form matters. And he was supposed to be entitled to a hearing, and he, they're saying he didn't get one. It kind of reminds me of my favorite line from a Western. Oh, I can't remember the name of the movie, but this guy's gotten arrested out in some unfriendly town, and he's talking to the sheriff and says, well, what's going to happen to me? He says, son, we're going to give you a fair trial followed by a first-class hanging. Well, he's getting process. He got a fair trial followed by a first-class hanging. Not that the outcome was predetermined.
Well, as I get older, Jay, I'm predisposed to look at the negative, but I find myself looking at the positives a little bit more as I get older. And I reminded my listening audience that in the grand scheme of things, with as much, if you are in favor of some of the immigration policies of Donald Trump, and most in the audience are, most Americans, frankly, are.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Well, if you're in favor of his immigration policy, Donald Trump is doing most of this right, because if those that are against him, those Democrats that are going to be anti-Trump no matter what, if the only example that they can find is, as you refer to him, this goober down in El Salvador, well, then the vast, then I frankly know that the rest of the cases are going as they should go. Because
if that's the only ball they can find, they're throwing a lot of strikes.
Yep, that's right.
By the way, that movie was Silverado, Brother Jay.
That's it. Thank you. I knew you had that, Ken.
Oh, man. Well, Jay, you know how much we love it, brother. Hit them straight over the weekend. Be safe. I don't expect you're going near Talladega Sunday, are you?
No, 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 no. I watched the race, but no. We went down there, 8 or 10 years ago. I mean, the crowds aren't nearly as bad now. But no, I don't. I've had, I went to Talladega the first time when I was 15 years old, man.
Wow.
15 years old. So that's how long races.
Well, you remember back when it wasn't the Allison backstretch, it was the Allison grandstands, and they filled it.
Oh, I know, absolutely. When we went down there, I went down with my best buddy. I was 15, he was 16. We drove down from Huntsville, and we could park in the infield for $5 per vehicle. Didn't matter if you had one person or 50. It was per vehicle. And that's where I watched my first Talladega race.
That's awesome. Well, enjoy watching over the weekend, and we love you, and we'll talk to you again next week, brother.
Love you, brother.